The deadliest serial killers in history. It's November 1974. You're 18 years old, just browsing for a dress at the Fashion Place Mall in Murray, Utah. A tall dweeb approaches you and introduces himself as Officer Roseland. He tells you someone has been seen breaking into your car. This skinny, geeky officer doesn't look like a threat. He looks like the kind of man your parents would want you to date. He is articulate, concerned, even handsome. You follow him to his car, a light-colored Volkswagen Beetle. When you get inside, something feels off. There's no police equipment, no radio, and then you smell it, the sharp piss scent of alcohol on his breath. Before you can reach for the door handle, he lunges across you with metal handcuffs. But he's clumsy. He misses your right wrist and snaps both cuffs onto your left. You start screaming, and his officer act vanishes. What you see now is a man with pure demonic eyes. He pulls out a gun and tells you he'll
blow your fucking head off.
Despite staring down the barrel, you squirm and struggle. He swings a heavy metal tire iron at your skull, but you manage to block it. Then you kick the door open. You tumble out onto the asphalt while the car is still moving. You run until your lungs burn, those headlights quickly reapproaching, hunting you down. You see a car on the other side of the road approaching, and you start screaming, jumping, and waving your arms like a lunatic. The car stops for you and an elderly couple. Frightened, concerned, freaked out, and confused, they let you in and drive you to safety. The man in the Volkswagen Beetle speeds by, staring deep into your soul with those demonic eyes. You don't know it then, but you are one of the only women who will ever look into those eyes and live to tell the story. The man Carol Durant escaped from wasn't just a freaky predator looking to bust a nut. He was Theodore Robert Bundy, a former psychology student and a man currently enrolled in law school. To the world, Bundy was a golden boy. But behind that geeky image was a predator who had already left a trail of bodies across Washington and Oregon, murdering dozens of innocent young women, brutally beating them to death using weapons like tire irons, metal rods, or firewood. What Bundy loved wasn't just the act of murder. He was a necrophile, often returning to the hills where he dumped his victims, sometimes for days, to perform horrific post-mortem sex acts and even apply makeup to the corpses. By 1976, he brutally murdered 28 innocent young women. Bundy avoided capture for years because of two factors: his appearance and the lack of interstate police communication. In the 70s, police in Washington didn't talk to police in Utah. Bundy would kill, move his hunting grounds, change his hairstyle, and blend in. He was a chameleon who could look like a different person in every photograph. However, Carol Durant's escape changed everything. She was able to pick him out of a lineup. This one identification sealed his fate. Bundy was finally convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 1 to 15 years. But a kidnapping conviction was just the loose thread that would soon unravel his entire terrifying tapestry. While Bundy sat arrogantly in a Utah prison cell, assuming he would eventually win an appeal, detectives from Washington, Utah, and Colorado finally did what Bundy banked on them never doing. They started comparing notes. The multi-state summit brought all the puzzle pieces to the table. Washington investigators brought forward their file on the Ted murders. They had a composite sketch, a suspect named Ted, a tan Volkswagen Beetle, and reports from a former girlfriend and a coworker who had both independently called the police to say Ted Bundy matched the suspect's profile. Then came the physical evidence. When Utah police impounded and stripped Bundy's Volkswagen Beetle, they didn't just find a car, they found a rolling crime scene. Hidden inside, investigators discovered a murder kit, a crowbar, a ski mask, garbage bags, an ice pick, and handcuffs. But most damning of all was the microscopic evidence. Vacuum sweepings from the car's interior yielded strands of hair that were a forensic match to Melissa Smith, a murdered Utah teenager, and Karen Campbell, a young nurse who had been found bludgeoned to death in the snow near Aspen, Colorado. To seal the deal, detectives uncovered his credit card receipts for gas, which definitively placed his vehicle in Aspen, Colorado, on the exact day Karen Campbell vanished from her ski resort. The walls had completely closed in. Bundy was no longer just a kidnapper. He was a serial killer facing the death penalty. Based on this mountain of newly connected evidence, Colorado authorities formally charged Bundy with Campbell's murder and had him extradited to face trial. In June 1977, while being processed through the Pitkin County Courthouse in Aspen, Colorado for a murder trial, Bundy asked for a break to use the law library to work on his case. He was his own lawyer, representing himself, so he wasn't wearing shackles. When the guard stepped out for a smoke, Bundy jumped from a second-story window. He survived in the wilderness for 6 days, starving in the mountains, before he was hunted down and recaptured by local police. But that was just a rehearsal. Bundy's second escape is the stuff of Hollywood thrillers. While held in a jail in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, he began a massive weight loss regimen, dropping over 20 pounds until his frame was skeletal. On the night of December 30th, 1977, he piled books and pillows under his blankets to look like a sleeping body. He then climbed into a light fixture in his ceiling, crawled through the ductwork, and dropped into the warden's office while the warden and his wife were out for dinner. He walked out the door, stole a car from the jail parking lot, and began a cross-country trek. By the time the guards realized the sleeping man was a pile of dusty books, Bundy was on a plane to Chicago, then a bus to Tallahassee, Florida. He was a ghost once again. In Florida, he was no longer the calculated predator. He was a starving, uncaged freak. On January 15, 1978, he entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. He first entered the room of 21-year-old Margaret Bowman. He bludgeoned her with the log and then strangled her with a nylon stocking. The attack was frenzied and over in seconds. He then moved down the hall into the room of 20-year-old Lisa Levy. The brutality inflicted on Levy was unprecedented, even for Bundy. After beating and strangling her to death, he sexually assaulted her lifeless body with a hairspray bottle. In his manic state, he left a deep, savage double bite mark on her flesh. A few weeks later, Bundy abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her junior high school in broad daylight. She was his youngest known victim, targeted purely out of opportunistic desperation. Her remains were later found in a dilapidated pig shed near the Suwannee River State Park. These final, frantic murders cemented his status as the most infamous monster in modern history. While he was on the run, a Pensacola police officer, David Lee, spotted a stolen Volkswagen. When he pulled it over, a struggle ensued. Bundy, exhausted and spiraling, fought the officer, shouting, "Kill me! Kill me!" He was caught. Bundy's trial was the first to be nationally televised. He played to the cameras, acting as his own attorney, even proposing marriage to a witness in open court. But the evidence, the hair, the fibers, and most importantly, the dental match to the bite marks on Lisa Levy, was insurmountable. Bundy was smacked over the head with the death sentence. On January 24, 1989, as crowds outside the prison cheered and set off fireworks, Ted Bundy was executed by electric chair. He confessed to 30 murders in his final days, but many believe the true number of lives is well over 100. You're a prostitute standing under the flickering buzz of a street lamp in Miami. The air is thick, your feet ache, and the night has been long and empty. Right up until that gold sedan pulls to the curb. The man inside looks like a grandfather, or maybe a retired athlete. He has a wide, easy smile and a voice like velvet. When he offers you a ride and $20 just to keep him company, you see an easy way to pay for a room tonight. As the car pulls away, you settle into the cracked vinyl seat. You watch the city lights fade in your rearview mirror. You don't notice at first that he's bypassed the motel. You don't notice the way he keeps glancing at your neck instead of the road. By the time he pulls over into the tall grass of the Everglades, it's too late to run. The last thing you feel is the sheer, overwhelming power of a man who used to box for a living. Your world narrows down to those massive hands. You try to gasp, but there is no air left in the world. The last thing you see is the moon through the windshield, indifferent and cold, as the man in the driver's seat watches the light leave your eyes with a look of pure, terrifying peace. Between 1970 and 2005, Samuel Little moved through the American South and Midwest like a phantom. He was a nomad, a shoplifter, and a former prize fighter. But while the FBI was hunting superstar killers like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, Samuel Little was quietly amassing a body count that would dwarf them all. He didn't just kill, he crushed the women society had already forgotten. For 40 years, he was the most prolific serial killer in US history, amassing the highest body count, and the world didn't even know his name. Little's methodology for murder was his greatest disguise. He would deliver a stun punch, a knockout knuckle sandwich that instantly left his crackhead victims unconscious and foaming at the mouth. Then, he would strangle them. By avoiding guns or knives, he didn't leave behind obvious murder signatures. Because he targeted women involved in sex work or struggling with addiction, many coroners saw a body with no visible wounds and a history of drug use and simply checked the box for overdose or accidental death. The most haunting part of Samuel Little's story isn't just that he killed, it's that he was caught repeatedly and let go. In 1982, police in Mississippi arrested him for the murder of 22-year-old Melinda Rose LaPree. A grand jury looked at the evidence and declined to indict him. He was immediately extradited to Florida to stand trial for the murder of Patricia Ann Mount. Witnesses literally pointed at him in the courtroom, identifying him as the man last seen with her. But because of unreliable witness testimonies, he was acquitted in 1984. For decades, he was invincible. But in the late 1980s in Los Angeles, he got careless. He murdered Carol Alford, Audrey Nelson, and Guadalupe Apodaca. He left them in dumpsters and alleyways, thinking they were just more entries in his mental gallery. But science was evolving faster than he was. In 2012, while Little was at a homeless shelter in Kentucky, he was picked up on a drug charge. A routine DNA swab linked him to those 3 LA murders from 30 years prior. Even behind bars, the world didn't know the scale of his evil. It took Texas Ranger James Holland to crack the vault. Holland realized Little didn't want to repent, he wanted to brag. Sitting in a cell, Little began to draw. Using his photographic memory, he sketched dozens of portraits of the women he killed. The detail was haunting. The earrings they wore, the gap in their teeth, the shade of their lipstick. These drawings allowed the FBI to begin closing cold cases that had been frozen for 40 years. On December 30th, 2020, at the age of 80, he took his final breath in a cockroach and rat shit-riddled jail cell after being smacked over the head with 7 life sentences, a small and arguably insufficient payment for the 93 innocent crackhead lives he ended. If you enjoyed the video or want a part 2, press the like button. If you didn't, go f*** yourself. But what you should definitely do is watch this video over here and subscribe.